As I have told before, it's more engaging, the community type of thing. It's not like it's just a regular academic seminar, it's just more of a discussion type. So I like to call it actually Samvad seminar. And so today I will be speaking. This is something that got really postponed from January. And since then I've been already one more time to India, so maybe I will add something. And then next activity that we are going to have is Amit, I was talking to you about all this because I didn't know whether you still know Audhi language. Probably not. There is a major initiative we have taken for the last 3 years to try to make Audhi as a language listed in the, what they call as Article 8, which makes it a national language. There are 23 right now. 24th is Bhojpuri, which is in queue. And if we do everything all right, maybe by end of this year, this also may be in queue. So Maithili is already listed, and so Audhi I think needs to be because it's connected to that. And we are having a one-day workshop come symposium on 23rd. So there will be some presentations from India because those people are doing research there, and there will be some presentations from here. And then our last seminar will be, Amit will be presenting something on monsoon. I think he's not going to present any monsoon songs, so it just will be only Tita. But if you want to sing something, that's fine. Monsoon is really full with the...
We also did yoga on the ship every day, on the US ship.
Oh really?
On the Indian ship there was no yoga classes. On the US ship, every day at 4 p.m. I was not the teacher, I was one of the students. One day I was the teacher, then I realized there's so many people who do better yoga than I do. So then I gave up my teachership to them. So every day,
wow.
4 to 5 p.m. And even on the moving ship it was not...
For how long? Like 4 to 5
Almost a month, yeah, more than a month. Every day we would, I mean, if the weather was too bad, then we had to do it. And about an hour long, 1 hour long.
Wow.
And end with some pranayam.
And they do it even if you were not there?
No, so one of the students was the teacher for yoga because she had been learning since she was 5 or 6 years old.
Oh wow, so that was a special because
she was there. No, but even if she was not there, there were enough practitioners that I did not know that they were, because I was doing it on my own, and then when I started doing it, some more people joined in. And then pretty soon I was seeing that they were doing better as than me. Then I said, oh, you should lead.
I did one once in your organization, right?
Yes. I still have pictures of that.
Yeah, and then there was a gentleman who had his frozen thigh for n number of years. And it just did only 15 minutes or so. And he said, he really got relief. He said he was never been able to get relief from that. So sometimes, this is really very helpful. So what I wanted to do today is really discuss this. My thought came because that time there was last time I went, not the last time, the one before, in December and came back in January. That time I went for Vedanta Congress. So I thought a lot of things that I was observing in India, how will it fit with Vedantic philosophy and practices. And then I went again in March and came back in March, and so I got to see a lot more, and there's a lot of people, at least socially and politically in India. So my goal here is to see, first of all, some fundamentals of what Vedantic think may be relevant to some of us who are not really deep philosophers, and then observe what is going on, and then see where it could gel with each other and what can be done for that, and where will it take. That's just where I'm trying to go to that. So feel free to intervene wherever you feel like. Just want to give you first a general sense of the Vedantic view. As this many times people are not even sure what is Vedanta. Some people say it's only certain texts. Some people say it's just the ultimate knowledge of the Vedas. So actually that could be anything, including somebody who may have written something yesterday in a newspaper, as long as it's referring to something that is relevant from Vedas to to what is today. So I have my own perspective, and this perspective, the one I'm presenting here, is something I'm very deeply interested. It's related to Ayurveda because it's very practical, but my interest is really to find out the science behind the Ayurveda rather than just the medical aspect of it. So I like to understand this whole universe, what is the Vedantic view of what the universe is. The prana is very important, talking about the meditation and doing pranayama is very important, and we are interested in it from the perspective of finding what this prana is. Is this really energy? Is this air that normally people associate with, or if it is energy, what kind of energy is that? Is this really the heat energy or something else? So we did some experiments when I was visiting JNU last year, teaching a course on science and technology in Sanskrit, and we are designing some experiments trying to distinguish from heat energy to prana. Either it's the same or something else. Because right now, the most fundamental energy that we understand is the prana. Heat energy from physics point of view. So how is that related to something like that would be prana? It's not exactly what people think that they're doing pranayama, breathing in and out, which is like a very gross form of prana. From where the Ayurveda starts describing this world, they think that Panch Mahabhutas came from prana. So pranic energy is really very primordial energy, which then results into this Panch Mahabhutas. And then there is that something else that is non-matter, which is the Trigunas, and which is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And then Mahabhutas, Panch Mahabhutas is very interesting because then they associate these are the ether, air, fire, water, earth is really not what it says. It is the properties of these things. They can be represented by this. They are not really, earth is really not earth. It means something that may have qualities of earth, like very gross, something that will be very stable, something of that nature. So connect that to what we would be able to sense from our sense organs, which is then related to for example, ether is something that is related to sound. Air is related to sound and touch. And fire is related to sound, touch, and shape. Water is related to sound, touch, shape, and taste. And earth is smell to it. So then it becomes very functional. So for somebody like me who is interested in chemistry and biochemistry, then we can start measuring this. Now, how does it connect to Ayurveda? It is when they think that your disease, when there is a disbalance in your something called the Tridosas, and Tridosas with this Bhat with Kaph is created by these Panchbhutas. So these Panchbhutas can really fix your Tridosas, and to fix that, they try to use these properties. So for example, they will give you something, an Ayurvedic doctor may not know the chemical nature of something, but will know the taste of it. And they know the taste balance is what. And if they can use that, then they think that they can solve your problems. So that's how it's related. Now the consciousness, the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas is again, I mean right now people are very much interested in neuroscience, and neuroscience only goes up to the consciousness. So Sattva is something that is all pervading, consciousness. And Rajas from this perspective is action, and Tamas is more like an inertia. And so these forces, the gunas and Panchbhutas, are really what make this universe. And from modern science perspective, very little is known. Actually, from modern science perspective, even matter is very little known from even physics point of view. So I think there is a long way to go, but this is a perspective one should bear, and at least in our discussion we will have a little bit of this in addition to Ayurveda, as to try to understand the Vedantic view of whatever is happening, because humans are not different than matter from this perspective. This is a continuation, and that's very important, which is important difference between what is we understand in Western science and modern science versus what is an Indian concept of the universe. And from Bhagavad Gita, it's very, very interesting. I just obviously did not want to make it a Bhagavad Gita lecture here, but it describes the sattvic and rajasic and tamasic a little differently. It brings the human aspect in it. So then action that is virtuous, thought through, free from attachment, which is from rag and dvesh, and without craving for results is considered sattvic. So it now be the sattva that we were talking there is now humanized. And action that is driven purely by craving for pleasure, selfishness, and much effort is rajasic. Action that is undertaken because of delusion, disregarding consequences, without considering loss or injury to others or self is called tamasic, which basically means out of a lot of ignorance. With that basic background in what I think for today's discussion of Vedantic perspective, I now jump into the what is going on in India. So you have the intolerance debate that's going on for the last several months. I think it's subsiding in lieu of something else that is going on there, and I'll come to that. But this intolerance and this political tone has been going on in India very heavily. Almost if your projects are not being taken care of there, because people are probably busy
doing this.
Yeah, busy doing this kind of things. And so much so that it has really repercussions internationally. There several countries have commented, including Obama when he was there just after actually I think he came from Republic Day celebration, I think 2015, and he made this comment, and there was a lot of things going on even in this country where he said Gandhi would be shocked about the intolerance about this somebody who had killed a cow and apparently the mob went and lynched him, and so this whole thing about this whole debate started from there, and then there was award wapsi, and that went on for another few months. So it's like it looks like they go from one belt to the another belt, and they keep running the game. In the process, actually, it becomes so political and so polarized political that almost no sensible discussion occurs. And I will come back to where the sensible discussion should occur in India. The organization, the institutions, they themselves get so much polarized and so much into this that it's difficult to do almost anything. So, but I want to go back to remind us where the basic traditional values of India lie. They lie in the independence and freedom of, the word they use, swatantrata and moksha. And for example, non-violence is the highest virtue, ahimsa paramo dharma. And I have noticed, coming from somebody who is really not in the philosophy and not trained philosopher, but I'm interested, and I'm trained scientist, so I kind of look at my training to philosophy. So for example, ahimsa paramo dharma, non-violence is the greatest virtue. Then Gandhi, Jains, many other groups, they say, we can't touch anything. But then there is a huge violence going on all around, including Gandhi actually said that, he will take up the gun if he has to do certain. Actually, he picked up the gun when he was South Africa. He was a soldier. And so what exactly is non-violence? I mean, what I'm saying is the discussion like this does not happen. Actually, this saying is quoted from Mahabharata. And it is said by Yudhishthira, who always carried a, not just sword, what was that, bhala, spear. Yeah, he always had bhala and spear and killed so many people in the world. So that means it couldn't be exactly that, because knowing what Yudhishthira was. So I, from my scientific background and conjecture, because everything is reversible in physics as we try to explain. So the ideas and meanings also are reversible. So rather than defining ahimsa, ahimsa is the greatest virtue. What about we say the greatest virtue is something that cannot be violated? Rather than saying violence, from violence to violation is a very different thing, because we know that dharma, as we understand, cannot be violated, because it's not something somebody creates it's something that is there. And that starts making different sense. Just to give you an example that many times this kind of discussions are not happening and consequently there are only extremes. One group wants to say do nothing, and another group wants to do everything. Satyameva Jayate and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is very important because in the concept of food, it doesn't matter. That maybe some people don't like certain types of food to eat. People don't, definitely cow is sacred in India, if anywhere. But nevertheless, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam also means that there are different kind of people who go to different kind of things, and that discussion doesn't happen. People take great pride in that, but you have to allow certain types of people to do certain things. Even though you may not like it, and that's just the nature of things. And then the last one, Ekam Sat Vipra Baudha Vadanti. And I have seen in Vedanta Society in Providence, it says the truth is one, people call it differently. It's very important. The Vipra should not be translated into people, because then like anybody starts saying whatever they want to say. The Vipra actually has a meaning, and Vipra, if the etymological meaning is somebody, V means something special, and Pra means intensity, some very special intensity, which means, this is trying to explain in English, is somebody who is very specialized person, somebody knows things. So it's like PhDs, maybe as an analogy. So if the PhD person has been trained to look at things differently, but not everybody else is. So before we start saying something like that, we need to understand. So that is just my second line of what I think practically Vedantic perspectives are involved in India, and they should be looked at when they are referring to any problem. What is happening? At least they should try to put in that framework. But this framework is never used. Never used. Everybody is on their own. And what is needed is this. India is the youngest country in the world. They have 65% of the population is below 40. So they have a lot of their own hopes and desires and concerns, expectations. They want to look for career, productivity, management. They are looking for independence, freedom, and creativity of all kinds. And if you don't give them a reasonable guide, teaching or knowledge, then they will express it some other way, which you may or may not like or may not be good for the society. And then, of course, ultimately people look for harmony, stability, and peace. So, but what do they get? The universities are full of these problems which have nothing to do with any of this. They are so politicized that everybody, like I said, everybody is a Vipra. Everybody has their own opinion, and they think their opinion has to be true. And so, without having this, even the recognition that maybe they need to study, they need to listen to the other side. It doesn't matter which side. So, India has been right now churning in a very deep manner on something that is very marginal in my opinion, very, very superficial. But they are making everything else run. There may be something to do with monsoon model. You can find out whether there is any model to find this kind of churning. So the two or three things that really came to mind was, one is the patriotism. People have to be, if that's what that says, Bharat Mata ka apman nahi sahega Hindustan. This is related to all JNU stuff, by the way. And that one is the University of Hyderabad. There was one scholar which some people consider it was a Dalit, some people think it was a OBC, but nevertheless, he was an activist. And nobody really even talking about that, because the issue has become which caste he belonged. It didn't matter whatever he did, or whatever happened to him. And this is very, very sad where the discussion happens. But nevertheless, he committed suicide, and then the casteism has come to the fore. And in JNU there was this protest against the hanging of Afzal Guru, who was convicted for parliament bombing, and the case went on for a very, very long time, and he was hanged, I think, in 2013. The bombing happened in 2001, so I think he had enough, whatever court conditions are in India, and he has gone to the president for mercy, whatever. He got hanged, but there are some people are using that and to unfortunately polarize this issue based on the religion rather than the crime or not a crime. So although there are mixture of people talking about, some people talk about it's related, they are against the capital punishment, some people talk about it's related to independence of Kashmir, the other people talk about related to a Muslim or Hindu, but nevertheless they make it a big issue, and of course mortifying, as you can see, the education comes right in there, that they are all thinking that anything that anybody objects to, whatever they want to say, that means they are interfering with their freedom of education, of all the things. And then there is a more recent controversy about Mahishasur and Durga. So this is again Jain's creation. Jain people very creative. they celebrate Mahishasur Day, and they think Mahishasur was really a Dalit, and so he is really their hero. And maybe that is okay, but real problem is happening is because they also say that Durga was actually a sex worker. So that kind of offends a lot of people, because obviously India is full of, including Calcutta. I guess even this is a leftist group, and I don't think they will go there and say this in Calcutta, the same thing. But then of course they have the freedom of the debate goes on to how the government or anybody is interfering with their freedom of expression, and then they are suppressing them because they are Dalits, and then the issue becomes caste, and then issue becomes reservations, whether there should be reservation or reservation. It's all get mixed up. So I'm turning back to my third layer of what I think is Vedantic discussion, which is really more practical, what is really happening practical, not really that much philosophical. So the Vedic society, and this is my conjecture of making this thing, because I don't think anybody had done like this. So Vedic society, it says Tasman Manabhyah Praja Uchate. It means that this is the Taittiriya Samhita. It says the human being is Praja. The whole human being is a Praja. And then there is the Varna system, which is that has Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. And I am in that one they talk about how again it's symbolic in my opinion. I don't think anybody got born from somebody's mouth or somebody's arm or something like. Symbolically they think the Brahmins are the ones who came from mouth, or they represent the mouth, whatever the mouth's role is, and the Kshatriyas are from the arm, and Vaishyas from the stomach, and the Sudras from feet. And from that, then in my opinion, degradation goes on. The feet means somebody who can move, which means this person only serves. This, in my opinion, is a mistranslation and misguiding, maybe sometimes intentionally, sometimes not that intentionally. But because what it leads to is that Sudra Varna is architects, I think I misspelled that, artificers, is the word they use for silk art, which includes Potter. I made sure I write in English for Partha. So this poster was really in Hindi, but I added the English words for Partha's sake, because he's a very interested in these kind of things. So for example, potters, carpenters, these are really the architects, artificers, which you cannot simply say that they are just service, although I mean Dr. Patel is here and he provides service as a doctor. So he cannot be, if there can be Sudra, so is he. We teach to students, we also provide service, and so we also Sudras in that, from that point of view. But then somehow there is a hierarchy that has been created by someone who, like us, can speak, write, or communicate. And so then that's what everybody else knows, and those who are really just maybe doing their job, they're not writing, they're not publishing, they're not speaking, nobody knows what exactly their opinion is. So in current society, what we have is, we have Savarnas, which is the Brahmin, Kshatriya and Vaishyas. And then we have this OBC, SC, ST or Dalit, which are all in Sudra. And so this binary has been created without, in my opinion, understanding why this was done and how this was done and what it meant. And So then the government has taken some remedial steps of employment related reservation and now political quota. So once you have done that, it's very difficult to come back from there because everybody wants to keep what they have. And that then drives this other thing that the churning thing that, because it has enough number of people who have their own self-interest to continue this, either for political reason or for economic reason. And so the debate and discussion that's supposed to happen intellectually, even whether it's under Vedantic perspective or not, does not even happen. Now I want to elaborate a little bit on this my idea that I don't think Sudras are what people think Sudras are. Because I already said they are architects. So, and they're engineers, they're doctors, they're teachers, professors. As long as we provide service, we are Sudras because we are providing service. Now in Vedic view, Vishwakarma is a Lord, is a God. And that's creator that gives the life, and then many people still write Vishwakarma as their last names, especially the carpenter group and the blacksmiths. So they really are directly connected to what is supposed to be their lineage to be God, rather than to be somebody that we consider to be low. They're not really low. They are somebody who are creators, and if they are creators, then they are really the people to be respected. And on the other side, you have Prajapati is another name for Brahma, who is also creator. And the whole creation is from Brahma. And Kumhars, particularly the potters, they write Prajapati as their last name. Sometimes other people also write, but at least the Kumhars write. So then there is the direct connection of them to Brahma or Vishwakarma. So if they were the direct connection to those, how could they be low? They have to be high rather than low. And but in today's world, we are even if we talk about Praja, we come at least in some areas. That's why I was talking to Amit, whether he's from Sultanpur, at least his lineage is from Sultanpur. In the villages, people still have some of this, and it's evaporating very quickly because of course change in the situation, circumstances, and economic and business, other things. But nevertheless, you can find them, and the question is whether some of these concepts that, like I said, they come from some of the Vedas and Vedic literature, whether the concept is worth keeping or not. I don't advocate one way or the other. I'm just simply saying there is no scholarship to consider that. Either you have one group of people burning the books and saying that they mean nothing, or the other group of people who say that these are all the words of gods, and they close their eyes and they keep chanting this and they think the problem will be solved. These are the two groups of people without really any real scholarship, which is something that should happen. Now I recently, let me put the next slide and then I'll tell this one. So in today's world, one more point is important that comes from my background from village, and if any one of you are from village, maybe you will be able to share it. In the villages, the prajas still play some major role at very important sanskaras when they are performed, whether at birth or at death, and anything in between. And I learned, of course, at birth they bring some kind of gift and they give the blessings. And when the bride comes, they have, even for the marriage, they give certain thing that goes for the marriage. And it's also, it's considered a blessing, it's not considered just a service, it's something that they give. But more importantly, at the end, the antim sanskar, when people die, I learned from, when my brother passed away, and I was there, and I see the barber, the nai, is supposed to pronounce the moksha at the end, not the panditji, not anybody from the family, not anybody else, it's them. So what I'm saying is there is a connection of all these prajas are to be considered higher and more important than what we think, because they provide us this and we can tell them to do this or that. I think it's more than that. Then what I want to tell you that I was looking at this because I had to give a lecture in Sanchi University in Bhopal, and I looked at this because they were asking about Sanskrit and science, and I was trying to connect all this to be science. The Praja people are really the people who are like technologists. And one of the things that I found out is that in Bhagavad Gita, there are all 4 varnas are defined what they are supposed to be. So for Brahmin, you are supposed to have 9 qualities, and which is Samo, Damos, Tapa, Saucham, Chantir, Raj, Mevcha, Jnanam, Vijnanam, Astikyam, Brahma, Karma, Sabhava. Which I wouldn't go into 9, but it's basically somebody who can do. Samo means somebody who can forgive. Damo means somebody who has the energy, capacity, and do. So one last one is in this one also is the Jnanam, Vijnanam. You should have knowledge, and then you should have special knowledge, which is what the Vijnan is. And so once you have all that, then I think this guy wants to come here, so let me pick up. Sure. Yes, Meherji. Are you here? It's a red big building, and it's on the Plymouth. Yeah, there are several cars, and there is a chess board outside the room. Yeah. I think that's the building. Yeah, that's the building, and you can see 427. A little bit, maybe 100 feet back, you will see a white door. Okay, I'm sending somebody with the red coat out. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that, but this guy is driving from Worcester, so what I looked at it. So okay, anyway, there are 9 qualities that a Brahmin is supposed to have naturally, and has the quality and be active, do them, not just talk about it. The same way is about Kshatriya, which is Sauryam Tejo Tritirtakhyam Yuddhe Chapi Palayanam Danam Ishwar Bhavasya Chhatra Karma Svabhavaya. The important thing you can of course probably understand Shaurya and Tej, and not running away from battlefield. The one that really hits me is that Ishwar Bhavasya, which means that you consider everybody the same. So unless you do that, you really do not have the quality. The same thing about Vaishyas is Kris Gaurach Vanij is supposed to be for Vaishyas. Now everybody, the 4th one is Paricharyatmakam Karma. Paricharyatmakam Karma Sudrasyapi Swabhavajam. Sudrasyapi Swabhavajam. Paricharyatmakam means the thing that seva. But if you really look at the etymology, pari means buried. Charya means go around. Atmakam means ours. The people around you, whom you consider yours. Sudrasyapi is not Sudras ev. Sudrasyapi means Sudrakabhi. That means all the 3 others also. All the 3 that before was, if this is in Kabhi, that means Unka bhi. The सेवा, the परिचर्यात्मक अपनों की चारों ओर जिनको अपना मानते हैं उनकी सेवा करना सबका स्वभाव शूद्र का भी स्वभाव. The Sudra does not need anything else to do, because if you do honest, sincere, dedicated service to those who you consider yours, not others. In the typical translation you find anywhere, it will say that the Sudras are supposed to serve the other 3. But it really is not written anywhere. It says Atmakam. It means the ones you consider yours. And then it's only Sudras also, not just Sudra only. So this changes this. Now it fits with this. That means for anything else to become, you have to have those other qualities. But if you consider everybody your own and you serve them your own, not others, then you're great. And if you want to take an example of mother, when she considers hers, nobody says that she is a Sudra. in a denigrated way is considered to be very high. So basically what I'm trying to say, the Sudras are supposed to be very high from their accent, the technology that they do, the society that they run, all kind of things, which is very important, and this issue will come again. So the praja, if I can do that, I should be very happy, and I should be considering myself to be fortunate, rather than somehow saying that I'm somehow not good enough, or other people tell me that I'm not good enough. I think this is the message that I wanted to convey. And the point that I wanted to make is that we do not have this issue being discussed either in the media or in the campuses or in the intellectual groups. Nobody is discussing. Everybody is discussing something else. And I think I blame that to the university. Education. Education, it is very important to see the education, what Mahatma Gandhi considers education. That man, I think, has had a liberal education, who has been so trained in youth that his body is the ready servant of his will, and does with the ease and pleasure all the work that as a mechanism it is capable of. Whereas in the Western world, the father of nation, the American founding father, says that any person born after that day should ever acquire the rights of citizenship until he could read and write of all those which have been taught for securing fidelity in the administration. This is very important, fidelity in the administration. So it's like whosoever is the boss, you need to learn how to follow the rules. Whereas here is very different. Unfortunately, this issue has not been used even in India. It hardly has been used, at least in modern times. So not having this discussion, having that as a system, and then coming from a society which is as ancient as India, I think there is a lot of confusion, and this is unfortunate that we do not have this conversation even on the university campuses. And whereas we have to deal with so many problems, when Amit talks about his monsoon predictions and other things, and the havoc it causes, and or the problems that we create if it is not there, we can see, and then global warming and other things, and or the nature that people have been associated over thousands of years, and how they have been able to understand. This is the contrast, and this is the contrast between what we consider as a modern, what I will, for our discussion here, will say Vedantic perspective. So Vedantic perspective, basically, what I'm trying to say is that I have more holistic understanding, and have an education of that kind, and then include that in our behavior. Now, the education is a huge enterprise. This is just to give you an idea that we have so many students, 50 million students in secondary schools in the United States, and then we have this breakdown of those people, and then we have in higher education 131 million students in the world in higher education, and expected to double in 2025. 8 million students study abroad, which is fairly lucrative business. And what I wanted to show you is that how much money is involved. It's $2.3 trillion in 2005. So this is like a dated number. I don't have the most recent one, although I got it from a publication in 2012. So it's a huge business. It has become a huge business. So even education in India, which is mostly funded by the government, people are not using it for what they are supposed to be using it. It has become a business most other places, and or in India people are making salaries and not really paying attention to what else they're supposed to do. But there is a big surprise coming up, and that big surprise is that there is this news says that higher ed bubble even bigger than the student loans. And the prediction is, this is a 2014 report, that in 25 years, we would not have the universities as we know. The universities would not even exist. My prediction is 10 years, not 25. 25 years, I think somebody gave them some money to tell them 25 years, at least they can hold on to 25 years. The way things are changing, many of the universities will not exist. I mean, it's not that all the majority of the universities will not be there. And that's I'm presenting again, I want to come back to the Vedantic view as to what to do, because the circumstances we cannot create, but we can do something with the circumstances. And if you have a Vedantic perspective, then in given the situation that this is what is happening now, this is a little bit further to what is going to happen is people are not going to classroom, they're sitting in front of their computer, they get, those of us who have had teachers in higher education also, who come with notes, and their notes is what our knowledge is, because from their notes to our notes and then goes to the exam paper, and that's not needed anymore because it's all there in the computer. So you don't really need the teachers who just come only to give you their notes. I mean, you need somebody else, which is where I think the opportunity exists to bring in the Vedantic perspective in the education, because we don't have that need anymore. And so, for example, Gandhi says we must be the change we wish to see. Now that's the definition of Acharya. That's Acharya used to be the concept in Vedantic time. Vedantic view will be that teacher will be somebody who you can see, or for example, those of us who are scientists, we know that if we didn't do what we are teaching, I don't think a student will stay in our class, because they will say, this is not the place I want to be. So it extend that to other fields also. And this is very important in this discussion about what is happening in India, particularly in JNU as an example, where there are utopian views, and there are a lot of faculty who have left-leaning ideology, and they like to think about, imagine and get fascinated with that this will happen, or if it didn't happen in Russia, but maybe they messed up something. We here, we are better off, we can do this, because it is self-delusional. And there out of 800 or so faculty, I think in JNU, there are about maybe 50 or 60, but they are hardcore. And so they believe in this, and they indoctrinate the students. And those students also believe in that. I mean, this is very idealistic. When I went to JNU, I also felt the very first month that this is really fascinating, because these guys were talking about villages. See, I was villagers don't speak English. Now these guys speak English, and they talk about village. I was really very fascinated. I got sucked into that right away, and I was the first time I became the counselor, which was I was there in 77, 78. I became the student union and I was supported by Student Federation of India, because in sciences you don't have the groups, but then they kind of support from outside. So, but then I realized very quickly that I found out that these guys are really the fake ones. They don't really mean any of this. But it's so easy to go in. I mean, I was in sciences, I could survive, but if you are in history or sociology, there is so much pressure from the faculty, because somebody published the questions, admission questions in the admission test is so much biased. They have to explain the Marx ideology and how that is better than anything else in maybe Indian ideology. So then people really, they already have an idea how to select them, and then they do all this. So it's very unfortunate. What I'm trying to say is very unfortunate that we don't have acharyas. So I think it's important to do that, and like I said, Albert Einstein feels the same way. And when that happens, in my opinion, when you have this only ideas and fake divisions in the society, let's say I just gave an example of Hindu, Muslim, Christian, based on religions, then you really need a huge amount of resources to be able to keep people not killing each other, because there are so much difference. As you start understanding that there are wrong ideas, at least realize that there may be some wrong ideas, or rationalizing, you start having intellectual interactions, as for example we are doing here, heartfulness, understanding, wisdom, and ultimately acharya. When you see me doing something, I don't need to explain, I don't need to write a book about it. Everybody kind of understands. So this is a very resource less practice. You do not really need a whole lot of resource, and this is where I think the idea of bringing this Vedantic perspective, however, I mean, I don't have really the answer how to, but I think there is definitely opportunity to look into what maybe, and I don't know how, but I think that what is something that is there. But these things are always challenges. So you have freedom of expression, And then you have, the press is a huge problem in India. Huge problem. This is just to give an example of what really is happening in what press people saw. Somebody said that if you watch Doordarshan, you think there is peace all over the country. The moment you turn on to NDTV, you think the whole world is burning. So there's so much difference with different TV channels, newspapers, magazines, and of course now they have a social media, which also there is a photoshopping of pictures, so people can put somebody else's picture somewhere else, and they get everybody worked up for 2 days anyway, and after that they find out that maybe not true, but it doesn't matter, then something else shows up. So these are the challenges one has to look at. And so there are like terms, prostitutes, and then shouting game. In India, one of the things I learned when I went there last time, when I went for my visiting professorship, and first time I watched several TV channels, and then I realized, coming from village, I thought this one thing I can connect, they're all from village. Why? See, in the village, there is no microphone, there is no loudspeaker. People, when something happens worth news, the people just shout. वहाँ पे हिंदी में गुहार लगाते हैं ना. So, but I found that all these guys are talking to each other, next to each other, they're shouting at them as if like nobody's listening to. So I find, I made connection. I think this is true. I mean, most of the people came from the village, and I think they haven't gotten over the hangover of the village. They still do the same thing. So almost there is no conversation when you have the television people talking to each other, because there is no conversation at all. So media is always looking for freedom, but not really that much of responsibility. And the politics, of course, gets into this. It doesn't really help the fact that so many media houses are owned by politicians. So they have their own, almost all of them are, one way or the other, they are owned by them. So the question of a political system, where media is supposed to be the fourth pillar, how that then plays out. How can you have a stable political system where, first of all, there is so much diversity in India, and there is so many, like I said, nobody's Bipraj, everybody has their opinions, they want to have their views, they can say whatever way they want to say, which is all that good, but there is no pillar, there is no crux, there is no major, the middle ground where at least some discussion going. I don't mean that everybody has to discuss, but somebody should discuss. I honestly did not find anybody where at least maybe 5-10 groups of people can sit and say, well, let's just have conversation and understand the whole situation from your perspective, from my perspective, and then try to move forward. Everybody just tries to block the other side, no matter how they find a way to do this, which is kind of very troubling. So what accounts for the many travails faced by the Indian democracy today, I just try to get that segue to this. Is democracy universal, culturally homogeneous system, or should Indian democracy look different from Western democracy? That's the question. I published a paper in Indian Journal of Political Science last year, and what we have done in that paper is to simply compare republic democracy, what we have in India, and praja democracy, what we think India had in the past. Because the idea of praja was what I described, what the people were the praja. So are there 4 pillars of the democracy that are doing their job beautifully? I don't see it. Is media pillar of only democracy? What if we don't have what so-called democracy? Do we have, is media important? Actually, you see that Mahatma Gandhi did this. When he went to India, he just took trains. He went everywhere. This was mass communication. He was trying to do mass communication, which is what media does. But he did in person. He just went everywhere. Everybody knew him, and he was able to see directly rather than listening to somebody else's filtered view. Actually, Ashoka did this by writing edicts, all around. He just for a long time, if you can still go see what he was doing. Whether some people say maybe he just wrote all this, he didn't do it. But that's separate issue. You can have that conversation. But nevertheless, the mass communication is important. And you say, what about before that? Narad. He used to be the communicator. All the news from everywhere, anywhere, he will go and tell the good and bad news to everybody, and also provide them solutions, sometimes also give them hard time. So media is important. Communication is very important. It doesn't have to be necessarily just television and newspaper. There has to be some other way. The question is, what would that other way would be, and how would that be connected to maybe Vedantic view? That's the last part I'm going to talk about. So, democracy and alternatives. So we have heard about Winston Churchill's view. Said no one pretends that democracy is perfect or all wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except all those others that have been tried from time to time. So I guess he was not educated in Vedanta. So because if he was, maybe he would think a little bit different. Because what I'm going to try to tell you after this is maybe a little bit different perspective. I don't think has been tried. So the Praja democracy has been mentioned in some ways in Rig Veda. There is Sabha, Samiti, and Vidathas. And then in Atharveda, it talks about Praja actually. In Manusmriti talks clearly about Praja, and I talked about Praja before, how in Vedantic literature you can find or connect the Praja to what will be known as Sudra Varna, and which is, in my opinion, is very high, rather than, if I had to grade anybody, I would put them higher than anybody else. So the etymology of Praja is, pra means something intense, like Prabal, Prachand, wherever you have pra, it kind of adds an intensity. And ja means creative productivity. So then somebody who has creative, intense creativity, which means specialization, skilled technology that somebody has, that would be the Praja. Now that fits with all these people, carpenters or blacksmiths or anybody else who is washerman, barber, they all have their own skills. What it gives them is, when you have Praja democracy, it depends on economically self-reliance. So these people did not do job. We are looking for employment, reservations, quotas. They didn't need it. They always had their own. Ishwar Bhai is here. He is self-reliant. He has full independence of what he does. He's not dependent on anybody's salary. So that when you have this self-reliance, then what it leads to is, then only you are free to think. If you are thinking about society, you will think like that okay, so you're not looking for yourself because you're all okay. So if you have self-reliance, then you are swatantra. Then only you are independent. And only when you are independent, you can give free opinion. There is no other way. Of course, we can go in very philosophical. I think Ishwar Bhai explains this. He was talking about karma yoga when the very first time he gave talk. You have to be detached. In science, we have to be detached. We have to be objective. We can't really just be, this is what I want, so I'm just going to make my formula like that. The concept is same. Fits here as well as in molecules. The man and molecules is same. When you really come to making a free, independent, unbiased view or formula or rules or technology, whatever you want to make, it has to be dependent on that. So in that sense, if we had the opportunity to have Praja, which is not a hierarchical system, it's an educational system. You create people, educate people so that they become self-reliant. They become entrepreneurial, and when they are in that sense, then they are free, they are independent, and if they are independent, they will be able to give opinion. And how does that come? How to do all this? It again goes back to the practice of some of the Vedantic and some of other, technically may not be Vedantic, yoga is a little bit different philosophy. It has been there all along, is to do the meditation, do all the tapasya, and do the whole yogic Ashtanga yoga, practice it so that you are able to realize yourself and the Atma and the Paramatma and the rest of the Brahman and the whole universe becomes the same. You have a proper understanding of it, and then that leads to philosophy, because obviously it needs to be communicated to people, and then it turns into rituals. Up to philosophy, I think it's okay, especially if it is coming from the people who have already achieved this kind of realization themselves. But when it becomes, then it is given the rituals for ordinary people, and then this is where it starts problem, because rituals, after a while, rituals become more important than anything that it comes from. And then the worst is the management. The rituals become managed by so-called religious people. And so the religion is, as far as I'm concerned, is really management, because there is money involved in that. If you take the money away, I think everything will start going backwards.
Yes.
So that's where the problem. In terms of science, we do the same thing. We have the fundamental knowledge coming from, thinking about ideas, hypotheses, getting the knowledge, and then you do scientific experimentation to prove that your ideas are good, and then that develops into technology. So this is my final. I have one more slide. So different groups in India, Jains, they have karma theory, and origin and evolution of the universe comes from there. Buddhist meditation is in modern world is being checked out by the neuroscience. Yoga and meditation is contemplative mind and education that is being practiced in this country more than in India. Concept of Maya actually is the basis of quantum reality that several physicists have actually talked about. And Ayurveda is, of course, the health, and this is where I started with. I want to just one more controversy in my explanation, and that will be end of it. Is that, recently, I think it's this year I believe, 16, yeah, this year, there was a paper which was titled Lord Shiva as Environmentalist. And there was huge news coverage about this, huge controversy that how can, the religion can be mixed with science. This is very, very funny, interesting way of looking at these things. Apparently the individual who was going to present, he got sick and he did not go. And I don't know whether he got scared or he did not go, I'm not very sure. But nevertheless, this still was a huge controversy, particularly because Prime Minister went there to inaugurate this. But, some of you maybe actually, Kalyanji must be knowing this Gaia hypothesis. In 60s it was derided the same way, because it's the Greek Gaia goddess name, and people did not believe in that, it's all nonsense. But now there are books written, and they actually become a mainstream science funded by National Science Foundation and others. And so the concept of what is living, and what I was telling you earlier when I started this, earth does not really mean earth, it means the quality of it. So life does not mean life the way just only you and I live, but whatever the process goes on in the life, that process goes on in the earth also. So the Shiva's idea of understanding Shiva is not just like somebody, the people just personify it and say, well, sitting there. Well, if really that's the case, I suggest any one of you could sit there in Himalayas without having any coat and then find out what it is. I mean, it's really a truly environmental representation of Shiva. Is if you really go deep into, some people call it destroyer. Actually, not a destroyer. It's a idea is that he represents the physical world, and physical world ends. There is a life. So if from that perspective, if you want to consider Shiva as an environmentalist in a way of trying to protect and live with the environment, it's a great inspiration. Rather than calling it a religious aspect, I'm sure there is a philosophy and there is great debate about other aspects of it. And I think rather than making it a scholarly discussion, they make it very cheap, and that leads to people going nowhere. The students particularly get very misguided, and unfortunately that leads to society having a lot of ignorance, and rather than solving problems, the problems continue. So thank you very much for listening to me about this, and I will be very happy to either answer a question or engage you in any discussion. Thank you. Any thoughts?
So you've come back from India recently. The students are getting all worked up in different universities. I have not kept up in touch with all of them, but there are there's such a young generation which is getting polarized by that. But you have gone to universities and given talks like this. So what happens at the end of those talks? The students that you find after you've talked to them about it, do they understand? Can they see a different perspective?
They do. They do. I think students in general, young people in general, are very interested in knowing what, because there is, one of the good things about all this thing is that they have got really confused. And they have realized that they got very confused. Which means if somebody tells them some sensible things, they think, this is maybe the way to go. That's one observation I've had. The other observation, which is very experienced, obviously I'm not introduced as somebody from JNU. So JNU has become an epithet, most places, because majority of the students, because when it comes to patriotism versus whatever else you have ideology, they're all patriotic. So I have learned when I was in JNU, I stayed in JNU, and several professors told me that they have stopped going to campuses for even some official work, because even one professor told me that, and he's a scientist, and he was invited to a talk, and he said that his organizers did not introduce him from JNU, and said, keep that association, affiliation kind of low. But the students found out it anyway, and he said that most of his questions were only about JNU and this whole problem. And some places actually they have not been able to speak, because the students rise up and say, so it's still very polarized in my opinion, and I think it will probably die down of its own, hopefully, or I think that there should be, maybe this could be used as an opportunity. I'm always a believer of looking for opportunity whatever happens. So this could be used as an opportunity to engage, not only, there are only few places which is, for example, JNU is where there is a leftist domination. Maybe University of Hyderabad has some, maybe some place in Jadavpur University has something. But many, like BHU, I think somebody went from JNU to speak and they didn't let the person speak. BHU is like opposite, they do not want to listen to the leftists at all. So my suggestion to some of my colleagues in JNU was that they should engage other faculty from other campuses. So it's no good really that you are afraid. I know Professor R.P. Singh told me that he cancelled 8 of his visits for different places. But he went to Kurukshetra University, for example, and after getting assurance that there will be security and there would not be any heckling or any of that kind of things. So I said, rather than doing that, I think you should really try to engage faculty from different campuses, talk about the issues, because you need to use this opportunity to bring that out. The JNU itself did. They have, even though this was like a little bit orchestrated, but nevertheless they have a place. It's like maybe 20 flights of staircases to climb up to the administration building. So they kind of stand there, and they have started talking about some of the professors, including some of them. Makaran Paranjpe, for example, also went there, and he gave a talk about, they had arranged this discussion about nationalism, and because there is a question of nationalists versus anti-nationalists, and those people who raise slogans against India, they obviously are branded as anti-national. And so they had some classes. Some of the professors brought their classes to teach there rather than in the class. So they taught in the evening, and there was some dialogue. But it's still very polarized. I saw the 2 tents. One was by the right nationalist group. One was what's so-called anti-nationalist group, and both were talking on their own loudspeakers. They were not listening to each other. They were just talking at each other and not listening to. But I hope that that will change, and I think there will be some nudging required from the administration that you have been dealing with some of the trying to get the bureaucracy over. I think this is important that the administration does do. I did meet with some administrators, some former administrators, both in JNU as well as other places, and they all really mean well. There is a lot of political interference, and they are afraid of that, because the newspapers, TV and all that comes, and it becomes very difficult for them to have any conversation with anyone. But But I hope that since it is at their door now, I mean, this is what I was saying, there is no conversation going on, there is no scholarship going on. So now it is at their door and they better do it. And I think in JNU there were groups of faculty who rose against their own association. And they said that we do not believe in that, JNU should not be defined by that. And I think there was at least some balancing. My suggestions to them was that do something worthwhile so that people know you for that rather than for this. And I think there is some move in that direction, at least I know in JNU. I know in Allahabad University there's something like that is going on, and a couple other places I went to Makhanlal Chaturvedi University of Journalism and Mass Communication, and that's the only university for journalism. So it was a good place to be discussing some of this. And I think they're all very concerned, the faculty very concerned, the students very concerned, because there can be, especially students, very confused, because they don't know which side to take, whether this is our right to say whatever I want to say, or it is our responsibility to learn first and then do something.
I have a very different question. When I think of Vedanta, I always think of Upanishads. So your concept of Vedantic society seems a bit more structured than the knowledge in the Upanishads. Where does the Manusmriti fit in? Is that part of the Vedantic literature? Is that part of the Vedas? Where is that?
Yeah, as I said before, this is very controversial. So some people really think the Upanishads, maybe Brahmanas, and maybe Bhagavad Gita. Uttar Mimamsa is also considered. But the point is that, I take this view that in India there is really no separation. It's like Sankhya, a lot of Sankhya ideas come in Vedanta. And of course, many of Upanishad ideas are on Sankhya also. So even I just talked about this Panchbhutas and all that, which is all really in Sankhya as well as in Bhagavad Gita. What was that? Vaisesika. So this is really coming from Vaisesika, but it's also in Sankhya, and it's also in Bhagavad Gita. It mentioned all this. So I think somehow, again, I think you're asking this question because I think we are trained in the Western world, right, and we look at things, we try to divide things and say, okay, so this is this and that is that. But interestingly, maybe fortunately, in Indian literature, the way I look at it, there is really a continuity. There is definitely a dialogue between one text versus another text. They may take a certain perspective of it and elaborate more on it, but you cannot simply say that this is completely different. It's never different. So I feel that it is always there. So now Manusmriti. Manusmriti, of course, has so much information that is in Vedas. So much information, including yugas. Talk about yugas. This is all in Mahabharata also. So, but then there are some certain things which are not covered other places. From my understanding, the Smritis were written as a commentary on the society of the time. And so Manusmriti is probably one of them. And it's written by somebody who is scholarly and hopefully objective for the society. And the current Manusmriti, there is like JNU, there was a burning ceremony of Manusmriti. So, I mean, interestingly, nobody really takes that offense to the burning of the books or something. All the places, I think universities should not be the place to burn books. I think burn them somewhere else. But nevertheless, there are certain references in Manusmriti which is very troublesome. And as far as I am concerned, I should simply cross them out.
But then that book was written for a certain time era, and that was written by a certain person, right?
That's right.
And that was a certain person's perspective.
That's right.
And as you said, I mean, everything evolves. So maybe what you're saying is those things should be crossed out.
I mean, I think nobody said there to say that you cannot do this.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you can burn it, then you can cross it out too.
And then that's the difference between Hinduism and whatever, Christianity or whatever, the difference between Bible and our books, that we don't have those 10 commandments.
Yeah, you do not have to follow.
Right, exactly, blindly or,
Because ultimately it gives, and it should, and I think even if you really do a true interpretation. Well, I say true is kind of very subjective thing, but let's say there is a way to interpret Bible whereby this will lead to the same conclusion, saying that you are it. Like the kingdom of God is
Heaven.
Huh?
Kingdom of heaven is within you.
Okay, kingdom of heaven
Yes.
is within you.
Yes.
So then, now there you go. And when you got one line, and then you can extrapolate that to everything else. So I think even, so now every book, including Bible, I think is perspective. You know, that a lot of people have added to the Bible also for maybe for the time being of whatever that time was, and Pope just I think declared something about divorce and Catholics or something, and they're now accepting it. So I think this is, every religion has something like this whereby people change, and as long as there is I mean, my view is that there should be really great discussion about these things, and rather than just
taking
saying
extreme view,
extreme view of one versus the other, but Manusmriti as well as epics, they all contain information. Nobody says that we do not believe in Vedic knowledge. So as long as they don't say that, I mean, the Buddhists to a certain degree distance themselves, to a certain degree Jains also have distanced themselves. But if you really look at the concept, there is not that much problem. I mean, they may be doing a little bit differently. Like I said, they have a karma theory, and the people have meditation, but then yoga also has all that.
Right.
So then it's only question of, you know, my recipe versus your recipe of whatever sabji you want to make. So I find, you know, people ask me when we were organizing these things at UMass, and people ask me whether why Vedanta does not have only this, because they think that there's some kind of text. And I said Vedanta really explains the whole universe. So everything that is in the universe can be part of it, and you can just look at it and go backwards.
There was in India, I just read that news, I think this morning. There's some temple, right? Shali,
Yeah.
whatever, right? And they opened their doors to the women.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, there it is. So I mean, I didn't, obviously we didn't have enough time to go into everything.
Yes.
But one of the other issues is this. I mean, for God's sake, I think it's a great thing. You know, people want to go to temple to worship. Why the hell you will stop them?
Yeah.
I mean, of all the controversies, I think this is really one of the good ones, because people just want to go and be part of culture. I have no idea why would anyone stop. But you know, some of these.
So that happened because I think Fadnavis intervened, right? The CM of Maharashtra.
Fadnavis, of course, Fadnavis.
Sorry.
But High Court actually there. They
Right.
took it to court, but then the government
Right.
did not oppose to this.
Right, and that guy actually CM, he was for the women. He you know, and he I think is of the younger generation, and his wife is very
I really did not know anybody who was not except for priests.
right.
So, I mean, this is not a society issue. This is just the people who control the temple.
So
So
this again the
the
business.
management-
I did not see any
management issue.
counter movement saying that no, we cannot allow you to come there. I got some other example here. There is a temple in Rajasthan, Pushkar, which is Lord Brahma's temple, and apparently there married men are not allowed to go. So
Really?
So, I mean, again, this is something that they must have found some way to do it at one point. I don't think it has really any basis. Now there is another temple in Kerala. I don't know how to say that. Maybe Martha can help. Chakkalatukavu temple. And apparently at one time, there is a time when only women are allowed to go. There is nobody else allowed to go. And actually, I was reading about it that women, the only men who are allowed to go is that women bring them. So, for example, there is a practice to people who drink, their sisters or mothers or wives or daughters bring them to take a pledge in front of the Devi that they would not drink anymore. And apparently that works. So the women basically control that temple, at least at a certain point of time. So, I mean, I think some of these practices maybe at one point is for certain things, and then it becomes like somebody
Yeah.
controls it,
Yeah.
and then they say, well, you know, I'm controlling it, and what I say is what is going to happen.
But all these practices are not, I think, nationwide. It is
Very local, very regional.
one local area.
Yeah.
Like if you look at this Shani Sringari temple, most of our scriptural books do not even have the mention of the temple. because it's not that old that we are talking about.
400 or 500 year old.
That's less than that probably.
It says
They
400.
claim, yeah. But the puja or worship of Sunny, the idol Sunny, there is two different aspects. This is Sunny Shila they call,
Mhm.
which is only like a stone with a
Yeah.
little say. And they said that they found from the river and bought it there and this whatever the whole
They say it appeared in the paddy.
yeah. But
And somebody got
there is
it.
a Sunny idol, the Murti. That is worshipped everywhere by women also.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very true. I mean, the way the story is that somebody saw it in a dream.
Yeah, somebody.
Well, I see a lot of things in my dream, and I don't even remember. I'm glad I don't enforce anything that I see in my dream. So
Dr. Singh, I mean, you went to all these universities and there are like so many of these students and they're, I'm assuming like 19, 20, 21-year-old
Yeah.
folks, right?
yeah.
I mean, they must be getting ready to graduate soon and then they must be worried about finding jobs, I would assume. So how do they have the energy or the time to engage in all this politics? How is it that they're not worried or they're not so bothered or they're not busy, working to get a talent or a skill that would get them a job that they
Or
would
even
need to,
become on their own self-reliant. like you
or
said,
whatever. I mean, self-reliant or even a salary job. Why are they not worried about that? Why are they so worried about all of these issues?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think, for example, Kanhaiya Kumar is a very famous guy now. He is 29 years old, he's not 20.
29?
He has been, from what I understand, in JNU for 12 years. So he kind of hops from one program to another program to another program. He gets paid, I think $25,000 a month as a scholarship. So it's very comfortable. So I think those students that you're talking about were really looking for a job and making their life and move on and contribute to society. I don't think they're interested in doing something like that. It is very unfortunate that in India this happens. Here we also have Republican and Democrat in the students, but they don't play that politics in the student government. The student government is their own, it doesn't matter, it's not really related to the parties. In India, unfortunately, the parties enforce this. And maybe at one time when India was trying to gain independence and the student movement was very important, very disruptive because it was British. But now they have this habit of doing the same thing whenever they disagree, and they politicize. The campuses are politicized completely. This is the group that is raising all these issues is ideologically leftist group, and some of them are very associated with very violent group like Naxalites and others. But then they have freedom of expression. They think government is brutalizing people, oppressing people, and this and that, and they think they have a voice. They should have a voice to say. I really agree that they have a voice to say. I suggest that they use that voice in doing their dissertation and thesis and writing. Doing a lot of research. Scholarship. But rather than shouting slogans, shouting slogans should not get them a degree. But some of them don't get degrees. For example, Sitaram Yechuri, and I know I was a student in the student union. Sitaram Yechuri was a student.